Hello and welcome everyone. Just pretend none of that happened. I hadn't actually plugged my microphone in. It was here, but it wasn't actually plugged into the rest of the stuff over there. So welcome to the January Open Topic Q&A. We do this once a month, and during this special occasion, you can ask absolutely any question you want on any topic you want. That doesn't mean I'm going to answer it. I'll think about it. You can vote on any question you want too. And that does mean I might answer it. So certainly I will look at the questions that are at the top of the heap with more attention, because that means more people want to ask the questions. If you didn't notice, there is a Slido code. It was on the opening banner. Let me flash that up for you just a second. It's a very high security scrambled encrypted password with 256 bits entropy, also known as Jan 2021. No one will ever guess that. What's actually surprising is that that code was available on Slido. So apparently nobody wants to do a Q&A in January of 2021 and actually call it that. Anyhow, if you want, join the Slido and ask your question. At this point, there are already 30 or so questions, so you'll actually be better off if you scroll through those questions and vote up the ones that you want to see answered, rather than kind of splitting the vote by asking it again in a slight variation. Now, fortunately, this is a quiet week. Nothing much happened in the financial markets. And what? The French Revolution of Finance started last week? Oh, maybe we'll have a question about that. Maybe I could answer a question about that. Let's see. And so this is going to be a fun one. I hope you are all having fun. 2021, surprisingly, seems to be going better than 2020, in some ways at least. So, that's a good thing. Let's start with our first question. First question is, will you please briefly explain the GameStop Wall Street bets situation? What is DeFi, and how could the situation be different if GameStop was available in a DeFi setting instead of only in a centralized clearinghouse market? I'll answer this briefly, but I also want to tell you that we did a very long and detailed episode on this as part of the Speaking of Bitcoin podcast. Speaking of Bitcoin is the new name for the original show, which was called Let's Talk Bitcoin and has been going since 2013. It's the longest running podcast in English about Bitcoin and other open blockchain related technologies. And we did another episode just a couple days ago, and we're going to be releasing that tomorrow on my YouTube channel. So you may have noticed that as of this week, I am now releasing the new Speaking of Bitcoin episodes directly on YouTube, which I didn't do before. Many of you have probably even never heard of this. We've recorded, 450 episodes of this podcast. You can actually hear the history of Bitcoin unfolding based on this podcast. So we talked about GameStop, we talked about Wall Street, we talked about short selling, we talked about all of that. And you get to hear not just my opinion, but also the opinion of my excellent co-hosts, Adam B. Levine, Stephanie Murphy, and Jonathan Mohan. And Jonathan was on fire on this particular episode. So that's coming tomorrow. I'm going to release it as soon as possible tomorrow. If you want to catch it, don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you hear about this episode when it comes out. All right, let's start again. Anonymous asks, will you please briefly explain GameStop and Wall Street bets? Absolutely, I will, Anonymous. So here's what happened. Wall Street is a criminal enterprise that engages in fraud on a massive scale and keeps getting away with it because they have completely captured the regulatory system that's supposed to do oversight. And the last time they crimed so hard that they crashed the economy, which was 2008, some laws were passed and some things were changed and no one went to jail. So, of course, that means they started criming again. One of the laws that was passed was no naked shorts, which means basically that you can't short sell a stock that you don't actually own. So, what did Wall Street do? Well, they did naked shorts. They did naked shorts. Again, only this time, they got caught by a ragtag group of degenerates, not my term, that's what they call themselves, who organize on a Reddit forum called Wall Street Bets, where they organize for the lulz, and they write memes, and they make jokes, and then they pile in on various meme stocks, and, you know, do silly things like piling on Tesla and turning Elon Musk into the richest person on the planet. You know, little things like that. Now, they had about 2 million members. Well, that was last week. Now they have 10 million members because apparently they're a force to be reckoned with. And they noticed that GameStop was being shorted for about 140% of its float, which means the shares available on the market were being shorted at a rate of 140% of the shares available on the market, which isn't actually possible unless you're a criminal enterprise like Wall Street. So what was happening in this particular case was naked shorts. And when that's happening, there is an opportunity when Wall Street has ganged up on a company and decided it's going to kill it and destroy all of the jobs that it produces in order to make a quick buck, as they are prone to do, there's an opportunity to flip the game on them. And that opportunity is known as a short squeeze. And a short squeeze is where you drive up the price of the stock by buying it, basically, in an organized fashion. And in the process of buying it, you force the people who have placed short bets on it to, well, they have to buy the stock in order to cover their bets, which drives the price up, which squeezes others who are short selling and forces them to buy the stock, which drives the price up and squeezes other people. And so GameStop went from $5 a share to $350 a share. Oh my God. And CNBC had to put screens up where they quoted people like "potato up my ass" and "thick daddy party" on Reddit. Those were their usernames. Explaining exactly how they were going to take Wall Street for a ride, because they could see right through their criminal shenanigans and punish them for it. And of course, you see, the thing is, using the free market to implement an investment thesis that happens to go against the rich is not a good thing. So CNBC was in an outrage over this, because you can't have little people making money by calling out the bluffs of big Wall Street firms. Out of this, of course, we are still seeing this unfold. They then tried to ban trading of GameStop. They shut down trading on major retail platforms like Robinhood. Well, no, they didn't really shut down trading. What they did was they shut down buying. You could still sell. So they flipped the short squeeze into a long squeeze. They let the hedge funds continue to sell to drive the price down, but they stopped the little guys from buying, which is market manipulation. They even managed to get Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to get a thumbs up from Ted Cruz, of all people, for the idea of investigating these shenanigans. Uniting Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ted Cruz, that's a miracle. So Wall Street Bets is able to execute miracles. Anyhow, what could be different in DeFi? Well, two things could be very different in DeFi. The first thing is, you can't do naked shorts in a DeFi market. You can't do fractional reserve selling of shares because, simply speaking, all of the things are recorded and cleared immediately. There isn't the bezel, as it's called, the difference between what's actually being cleared. In the traditional financial markets, it's a game of musical chairs, only the problem is many of the chairs don't actually exist. So when the music stops, everyone falls down on the floor. So it's better to not let the music ever stop so that no one notices that half the chairs have been stolen. Or are fictional chairs that were created out of thin air. Now, you can't do that on a blockchain, so therefore you have transparency of the trading, the order book, and the actual available security. So that's one way DeFi can help. The other way, of course, which is even more important, is that when the big boys get screwed because they overextended their criming, and they decide they want to shut down the market, they can't. You see, that's the little thing about centralization. They can't. Decentralized markets cannot be shut down. They run 24/7 and everyone has equal access. So they can't change the rules in the middle of the game just to screw someone who attempted to screw them back. So, DeFi could help in a variety of ways here by basically setting a level playing field with the same rules for everybody, where there might be richer people who have more leverage, but they can't just retroactively change the rules. All right. So that's the first question of the day. I hope you enjoyed that. And as I said before, for a whole hour's discussion, or actually I think it was 45 minutes discussion on this specific topic, please watch the episode that we're going to be releasing tomorrow of Speaking of Bitcoin. All right. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to drink to the health of Wall Street hedge funds with a mug that says, not your keys, not your coins. So we're going to get another question up. I have to tell you, I'm feeling a sneeze coming on. So if you suddenly see the technical difficulties, please stand by screen. Just know that by technical difficulties, what I mean is I'm about to sneeze and I don't want to blow out your eardrums if you happen to be wearing headphones. So don't worry, I will be back 4 or 5 seconds later with tears in my eyes. So just a fair warning there. I might actually have to do that in the middle of a question. Let's go to the next question. Can you comment on Dalio's remarks relating to governments not allowing Bitcoin to succeed? Can they prevent it? Well, here's the thing, Dino. Here's the thing, Dalio. I think the main thing here is that Ray Dalio, the successful investor, is looking at Bitcoin the same way, rich investors who are already part of a system that works really well for them look at Bitcoin. They look at Bitcoin as this weird outside thing that they don't understand exactly why anyone would need it. And then they say things like, well, no one would need it. Or at least they used to say that. They used to say no one needs this thing. And what they meant by that was, I don't need this thing because I happen to be a rich white male in the richest country in the world, sitting in a office on the 55th floor of a tower in the downtown area of New York, where apparently banking works. So for the other 6 billion people who actually need open access to finance, an economic system that cannot be compromised so that its rules can't be bent to shut out the little guy, where you don't need to prove generational wealth in order to participate, where it doesn't matter who you are, and where access is simply one smartphone app download away. For those people, Bitcoin makes sense. But something changed in the last year. In the last year, after seeing Bitcoin come back again and again and again, after each round of bubbles, the big investment people started believing and understanding the concept of digital gold. So now they see that Bitcoin could be useful to them too. And by useful, I mean it could make them even more rich by protecting their investments from inflation. It's a good story, and I think it's a very real story. Of course, that's not all Bitcoin is about. The problem is that they don't see what else Bitcoin is about. So when Dalio says governments will not allow Bitcoin to succeed, he's got 2 assumptions baked into that statement. The first one is he has a very specific notion of what it means for Bitcoin to succeed. And secondly, he has a very specific notion of what governments can do and how much control they have over that particular aspect of Bitcoin's success that he believes is what it means for Bitcoin to succeed. So let me unpack that. First of all, what does it mean for Bitcoin to succeed? I've done a video on this called Measuring Success, which is specifically about what does it mean for Bitcoin to succeed. You see, the answer is very different if you are one of those people who already have privileged access to banking at the milliseconds trading scale on any security or investment anywhere in the world in any currency, and no one's stopping you because, you own the world. Versus how people look at Bitcoin succeeding if they're part of the other 6 billion. Clearly, Dalio's definition of success for Bitcoin is as a monetary instrument whose store of value can be preserved in the face of inflation. Dalio doesn't care about confiscation of assets because no one's confiscating Dalio's assets, although Dalio may confiscate other people's assets. That's how it works. Dalio doesn't care about censorship resistance because no one censored Dalio, ever. Dalio doesn't care about borderless operation because anything above 14th Street is northern New York, possibly Canada, and foreign territory. So as long as within that 4 square block radius it works to enrich Dalio, then borderless operation isn't that important. And in any case, Dalio already has borderless operation of his money. Dalio doesn't care about open access because Dalio already has access. And I'm picking on Ray Dalio here, but the same applies to all of these new Bitcoiners who have suddenly discovered the idea of digital gold, are interested in the monetary principles, and do not understand the importance of all of the other components. So when Dalio says Bitcoin can't succeed, what he means is as a monetary instrument. He doesn't mean as a censorship-resistant, open borderless medium of exchange, which it already is succeeding as, but doesn't actually threaten central banks. And therefore, success of Bitcoin depends on its price, not on its openness. To me, Bitcoin is a technology of freedom. And if freedom in financial matters is available as a choice to those who need it, Bitcoin has succeeded. It doesn't matter if Bitcoin's worth $3, $300, or $3 million, although the more people you're trying to onboard, the larger the economy you need to be able to push through. But these people do not care necessarily about the price as long as it's more or less stable. In fact, they're more scared of the volatility. Then what is the other part of that, which is governments not allowing Bitcoin to succeed? And in this case, what Dalio is talking about, by governments, he means the United States and its allies who control the world from a unipolar perspective, because he still thinks the US is a superpower. The world's changed, Ray. And also the idea that if these governments decide to stop the success of Bitcoin as a monetary instrument, they will simply, by fiat, by decree, say you can't do that and shut it down. Well, they can't shut it down. So they're going to shut down the easy-to-use exchanges that allow people like Dalio to access Bitcoin as a speculative investment. Now, what they're not going to be able to shut down is the person-to-person transactions that drive the actual economy of the other 6 billion. But that's not what Dalio thinks of as Bitcoin's success. There's a risk here. The risk is that all of these investors who are coming into Bitcoin purely for the monetary policy don't understand the other principles of Bitcoin. Worse, they don't understand that the only reason the monetary policy is immutable is because of the other principles of Bitcoin, and they will happily discard them. More on that in the next Q&A we're going to do in just a few minutes. So yeah, Dalio is correct. The government will eventually be offended by the monetary principles of Bitcoin because it will provide people with an exit, and the government will try to stop people from easily accessing those facilities and opting out from the economy. The question is, how far is the government willing to go? Are they willing to arrest people? Are they willing to throw people in jail? Are they willing to make the use of Bitcoin a crime? Well, They've done all of those things in Venezuela, and guess what? I still pay my contractors in Venezuela in Bitcoin every month. So apparently, it's still succeeding. It's still succeeding for the primary purpose of Bitcoin's success, which is enabling economic activity for the other 6 billion, like my contractors. And so it is succeeding, even despite a vicious attack from an authoritarian government. All right, so subscribe, like, and share. We have 600 people on the live stream. I'm glad you all came because, listen, when I first look at the numbers of viewers, I was worried. I was really worried. 20 minutes ago, there were 50 people on this live stream waiting for it to start. And I was worried. I was worried that something kept you. Maybe you were at the grocery store. Maybe you had to pick your kids up from soccer practice. Maybe something was keeping you. So I was really thinking about delaying the start of the live stream so you could come back and be ready for it. But, of course, there you are and you did arrive. So everything's okay, right? Andreas M. Antonopoulos asks, no, it's not, don't do that. That's not me. Why do I even have impersonators on my Slido? Really? Even here in this sacred space of Slido? Anyway, Anonymous asks, your optimism and myth debunking in Bitcoin keeps me going, but your talk with Anita Posch last month caused me to lose sleep. Please elaborate in detail on the Queen's dilemma problem. It is, as you said, just slippery slope logic, right? Not actually Andreas. That was added by my producer to explain that this is not actually me asking me. We have a special segment for that. It's called Down the Rabbit Hole. So what was this interview with Anita? I did a great interview with one of my patrons and a good friend, Anita Posch, who has a fantastic podcast. And we talked a bit about this idea of rich investors who have come into Bitcoin finally appreciating the concept of digital gold, the monetary principles, etc., and why that is not something that we should instinctively applaud, but we should also maintain a degree of skepticism. And I describe this from the perspective of the Queen's Gambit, just because that happened to be popular at the time, but this idea being that these investors who understand the monetary principles, like Ray Dalio we were talking about in the previous thing, who understand the proposition of digital gold, do not understand censorship-resistant, neutrality to sender and recipient, open access without vetting or authorization, neutral operation without censorship-resistant or blacklist, whitelists, and things like that. They don't understand these principles because those are not useful to them. Those are irrelevant. They already have all of those capabilities of the traditional financial system. The problem isn't that the traditional financial system can't deliver privileged access. The problem is the traditional financial system delivers that only to a tiny sliver of the human population, and it gives enormous power to those who get to decide who's in and who isn't. Bitcoin delivers these capabilities to everyone without vetting. And quite honestly, not only is that an alien and unnecessary concept, it also complicates things for these investors because it puts them at odds with their regulated, legitimate business, short selling GameStop, which they're involved in on a daily basis. So what happens is if they start investing in Bitcoin, eventually the regulators come to them and they go, tap, 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 excuse me, but this block contained illegitimate transactions. Oh, really? What's an illegitimate transaction? Did it violate the consensus rules? No, it was to an address that we've blacklisted because it belongs to an Iranian farmer. Oh. So what do you want me to do about that? Well, we want you to ensure that no such thing happens again. So we're going to be introducing some enhanced KYC and AML regulations at the exchanges. You don't mind, do you? No, I don't mind. And there's this upcoming hard fork or soft fork that introduces new privacy features. That would really mess with our new regulatory regime. So, maybe you can pressure the exchanges to, I don't know, not agree to that fork. Maybe they could pressure the miners to not agree to that fork. Also, by the way, here's a new list of regulations we're passing, which is about how miners should produce clean blocks. And these blocks do not contain transactions that we do not like. We'll be sending them an updated list every minute with which addresses we don't like this minute, so they can make sure to keep up to date on who the baddies are, because we don't want any mistakes being made as to who the baddies are. So these are the new regulations, but they won't affect your monetary digital gold one bit. So don't worry, right? Is that okay, Mr. Dalio? Sure. Fine thing. Doesn't bother me. It's not like I needed access to the financial system. And so on and so forth. But here's the problem. The problem that these investors do not understand is they can't see 6 moves ahead on this chessboard, because move number 6 is telling the miners, you know what, this halving you have coming up, it creates a scarcity situation that is contrary to the central bank's inflation paradigm, and we do not want you monkeying with our monetary policy. So we're going to ask you to please not do that. We want tail emissions. We want you to continue inflating Bitcoin so that it doesn't compete unfairly, because it would be unfair competition against the dollar. And since all of the miners have licenses and all of the miners are required to produce clean blocks, we already know who they are. All of this was the result of you accepting KYC 6 moves behind. Sacrificing the pawn that puts minor restrictions on exchanges today puts you 6 moves from checkmate, and you don't even know it because you're not looking that far ahead. And this is the problem. You can't have a Bitcoin that gives you digital gold with monetary sovereignty and scarcity competing against central banks if you also don't understand why the other principles of open access, censorship resistance, neutrality of the protocol, and borderless operation, including the anonymity of users and miners, are fundamental building blocks that give you the ability to maintain that monetary policy. And if you start compromising on those things, eventually you lose the monetary policy too. It's just a small ask at the end of the day compared to all of the other asks. The things that the other 6 billion are fighting for, ironically, actually underpin the very use case of digital gold that you care about. But you can't see that yet. So, yes, there is a very good chance that on this slippery slope logic, we have to think 6 moves ahead. And what that means is, you defend the neutrality of the system today. They don't have to start making changes to the protocol to threaten the decentralized nature of the protocol. And of course, they're not going to immediately go to, hey, developers, you have to implement blacklists at a protocol level. No, absolutely not. First, they go to exchanges. And exchanges now need to implement some kind of vetting of unhosted wallets, also known as wallets. And then they ask for those wallets to not be on a blacklist. Well, they already have that, etc., etc., etc. It's there that they start, in the regulated safe havens that Bitcoin interfaces with traditional banking. And that's where they start chipping away at the on-ramps and off-ramps and trying to make sure that more and more institutional money that it's easy to capitulate, that it is easy to compromise, will be on their side. And these things will become important when you have things like soft forks that threaten the ability to maintain these regulatory systems. So that's the Queen's Gambit story. You can watch that interview with Anita Posch if you want more details. I can see why that worries you. I'm still optimistic. I don't think they'll be able to succeed. I think there are hundreds of opportunities for us to thwart every one of those 6 steps that takes us to compromise of mining and finally botching the monetary scarcity that investors so love. But we have to be diligent, and also we have to be innovative. And one of the best ways to scrap these 6 further steps, to change the slippery slope, is to keep changing the technology from under their feet. Because ultimately, the technological innovation that is happening allows us to warp the board itself. It allows us to change the chessboard. They can be thinking 6 moves ahead, but if we change the shape of the board, none of that really applies anymore. So technological innovation, together with diligence and the appropriate level of resistance to authoritarian moves, is going to be necessary for us to prevent this. Let's see what's happening in the chat. I'm going to just take a quick sip of coffee while on mute, and I'll then get back to you. Speaking of which, can miners refuse to include transactions even if the transactions have sufficient fees? How can you be sure a transaction won't be censored? Asks Didier. Hi Didier, good to hear from you. Thank you so much for that question. It's a great question. Miners as a whole can't refuse transactions because censorship resistance is based on the idea that as long as some miners operate honestly and neutrally towards transactions, and they get a chance, a turn, a block every now and then that they mine, then your transaction will get through. It simply means that because the other blocks won't let you in, you may have to wait a bit. Think of it this way. Think about this as an elevator, and you want to get to the top floor, and the elevator keeps coming, and 1 time out of 10, the elevator door opens, and it's empty inside, and you can get in, and the other 9 times out of 10, the elevator door opens, and there's some bouncer-looking dude standing in front and says, sorry, we're full. There's only 1 person in there. Sorry, we're full. We can't take the likes of you, sir. And the door closes and you miss that elevator. Well, the good news is there's more coming. So as long as they can't blockade all of the blocks, as long as there is another elevator coming, you can just wait. And that means you're going to wait longer to get your transaction included, but if it has sufficient fee, it can compete with other transactions. In order to really achieve censorship, they need to get a majority of the hashing power and then use that to actively blockade. And that means 2 things. 1, they're not only refusing to include these transactions, but they're also trying to orphan blocks that include these transactions, which is effectively a 51% attack against Bitcoin. Very, very difficult to pull off. And also requires global coordination with miners who are in different countries. And yeah, that's the kind of attack that might one day happen. I doubt it. I don't think it's a very effective attack. Also, there are quite a few countermeasures that can be taken. And so, from that perspective, censorship resistance is a core principle that is ensured by the anonymity of miners, the randomness of the process that ensures that no miner has a sustainable advantage unless they collude with others, the reward system that ensures that if they try to break the rules, they get punished and lose money. All of these things play together to achieve censorship resistance in the long term. So a miner can refuse to include a transaction, but all miners will eventually process a transaction as a whole because of the competition that exists in the system. You have to stop all of them in order to have meaningful censorship emerge in Bitcoin. And at that point, there would be a very, very strong incentive to introduce zero-knowledge systems to, for example, encrypt addresses and encrypt amounts in such a way that you can no longer do that. Give me a second because I'm noticing that my questions are a bit the questions are getting chopped when they're big, and I hadn't noticed that before. So I'm making some modifications to the cropping of the question screen in real time. Oh no. This could go horribly wrong. If you could see what I'm doing right now, it's ridiculous, but we're going to get there. Don't worry, don't panic. In the meantime, talk amongst yourselves in the chat. In fact, this might be a very good opportunity to do a emoji tweet storm, or emoji storm, sorry, in the chat room, to show all of our new subscribers and members and friends who recently became members all of the very cool custom emojis that exist in this system. So let's see if I can make this. There we go. I think that worked. That worked! Say everyone understood Bitcoin tomorrow and we had all the manpower and funding needed, how long until we're ready for mass adoption? Lightning, better interfaces, etc. And how long until we have decentralized organization and governments? Asks our friend Do-Mescaline. Don't Do-Mescaline, kids. Well, I mean, do if you want to, but certainly I'm not endorsing that. So let's say everyone did understand Bitcoin tomorrow, and we had all the manpower and funding needed. Well, what would we need then? Well, we'd need some woman power and various other forms of power. But let's say all of the people were helping us with all of their power. How long until we are ready for mass adoption? You know, here's the problem with this question is that it's a circular question, which is if we had mass understanding and mass adoption, how long before we would be ready for mass adoption? And of course, these two things go in cycles that pull people in as we go. So the software gets better, which creates more opportunities for new applications, new use cases, and makes it easier for more people who previously could not understand this system to now understand this system. So then they adopt the system, etc., etc. How long do these cycles take? How long does this process take? Well, strictly speaking, it never ends. But in terms of reaching billions of people around the world, I think more than a decade is a good rule of thumb at this point. Maybe a couple decades. So the internet took approximately 25 years to get from a bunch of geeks in universities until 2007 with the launch of the iPhone, and suddenly it became big. It wasn't until you really had mobile devices and very widespread use of the web, and email was essential in all businesses, that its use really exploded. That was the internet. 25 years, maybe even 30 years. From one end to the other. So where are we so far? We're in 12 years of Bitcoin. Possibly the first two were so slow that you can't really count them, so maybe 10. And maybe we've got another 10 or 20 to go before we see a similar growth pattern as the internet. I think that's a fair assumption. But, obviously this all depends on a number of external factors that have nothing to do with Bitcoin, but have everything to do with how the rest of the system and how the rest of the economy fares, because Bitcoin doesn't exist in isolation. It exists in relation to a number of other internet technologies, as well as the broader economic environment in which it exists. How long until we have decentralized organizations and governments? Decentralized organizations we already have, and they're going to keep getting more and more sophisticated. Decentralized governments, I don't know if that really makes sense, and I don't know if we ever get to that. I mean, if you think about it, democracy is 3,500 years old. I would know, I'm Greek, we invented it, and the idea of democracy, or even representative democracy, has existed for a hell of a long time. The idea of taking that into the digital realm, that's disrupting a very old technology. Let's see. I don't know. Tom Riddle says, I'm so obsessed I can't shut up about Bitcoin with everyone I meet. Now I worry I'll get robbed one day. Oops. I think I'll do Horcruxes. Split it, maybe keep 2 ledgers, give 2 to people I trust, give some to Xapo and put some in the bank or some other system. So be careful with this, Tom, because again, a lot of people miss the fact that security has to be balanced against resilience, meaning that more people lose their money because they make a very simple mistake or because of a natural occurrence, an accident, a flood, forgetting something, losing a piece of paper, or getting a corruption in a hard drive or something like that. More people lose their Bitcoin forever where no one gets it than have it stolen by someone deliberately. And even those who have it stolen by someone deliberately, it's not because they were specifically targeting that person. Usually it's because, again, they made a mistake, such as typing their mnemonic phrase into a website because they were phished. And so there's a balance to strike here. And the balance depends very, very crucially on your level of technical competence. But the problem is that there is a cognitive bias here, a cognitive blind spot that we all have, the Dunning-Kruger effect, which of course is famous nowadays. But the basic idea here is that we overestimate our own technical competence. And in security especially, many of the solutions that we hear and read about online, they create the illusion of security by layering various complex mechanisms. So if you have this complex-looking Rube Goldberg-like machine of security where you don't even know how some of the pieces work and it's all very, very complex-looking, that creates the feeling that this is a very secure solution. It's impressive. It looks sophisticated. The truth is that a lot of information security is about very simple concepts applied consistently. And a lot of these distractions of, what you really should be doing is creating entropy from a Geiger counter or a video camera pointed at a lava lamp. Then you feed that into an air-gapped computer that you built from a distribution of Yggdrasil from 1996. And once you've done that, you write your own BIOS drivers in order to connect a USB device that isn't a regular hardware wallet, but something you made out of a Raspberry Pi, where you injected entropy by throwing dice that had magnetic surfaces that could be read by a different camera, and then all of that was fed into a quantum-proof computer inside a Faraday cage buried under the ground that could only communicate through Morse code that was sent through optical pulses, and then you might be secure. That's going to lead to problems. And it's going to lead to problems because although it looks very sophisticated, if you try to implement that, you will exceed your technical competence level. And when you exceed your technical competence level, you will make mistakes. And those mistakes in such a complex scenario are single points of failure. They're catastrophic mistakes. So the more complex the system, the more a single mistake can be a single point of failure, the more a mistake that occurs because you've exceeded your technical competence leads to catastrophic loss of funds. So, Horcruxes, yeah, sure, but how are you going to do them? Split them? How are you going to split them? Are you going to put words 1 through 8 here and 8 through... No. Yeah, maybe you could do a Shamir secret sharing scheme, or you could do multisig, or you could, no, don't. Because the truth of the matter is that keeping it much more simple will ensure that you always know exactly what you're doing. In fact, what's better is if you have that level of technical competence and instead you do something much, much simpler and dumber, where you will be a complete master of that operational security and you will be able to apply it consistently. A single mnemonic phrase etched on a durable medium such as steel, or using a more fancy device, but you can simply use a punching kit to stamp it on steel. And if you really want to take it a step further, 2 copies, maybe put one of them in a bank vault so that it's not in your home. Maybe put the other one in a non-obvious location. And if you want to take it maybe one step further, an optional passphrase made of, let's say, 4 to 6 English words, separated by spaces, all lowercase, randomly selected. And in order to be able to back that up, probably best to use your password manager so as not to complicate things. And that's it. Stop there. And even there might be far enough, and maybe you shouldn't go that far. Listen, for some people, even self-custody is a step too far, and their skills need to be much more sophisticated before they go to self-custody. That's the truth. Not your keys, not your coins, means that you have to strive to self-custody by developing your skills. If you jump into self-custody before your skills are developed, you're going to make mistakes that will put you at equal risk as a custodial solution. So, there we go. 780 people on the live stream. Hello, thank you, welcome. We're having a really fun Saturday afternoon, evening, and morning here. I hope you are enjoying it too. Sorry you arrived late. You missed all of the amazing stuff. I mean, if you had been here 15 minutes ago, there was nudity. There were stock picking suggestions. I predicted the price of Bitcoin out 7 years into the future with uncanny accuracy. And of course, you missed all of that, and I'm going to delete it from the final video. So next time, be on time. All right. Rumor says that India is planning to ban all cryptocurrencies on Monday, the 1st of February, during their financial budget announcement in order to create India's digital currency. In what ways could this affect Bitcoin? Well, that depends on whether you live in India or not. It cannot affect Bitcoin. Honestly, more countries with much more financial clout than India, for example, China, have previously banned Bitcoin. I believe China has now banned Bitcoin 217 times. No, wait. 218 times. They just banned it again. India, on the other hand, has only banned Bitcoin twice. So this would be their 3rd time, and maybe this one will stick. I have no doubt that in India, unfortunately, totalitarian and authoritarian forces have taken hold of the political system and are ruling in a way that really disregards the impact of their decisions. We saw that with demonetization, which was a complete and utter tragedy of human cost and really completely failed in its stated ambitions and goals, except of course for bailing out the banks. It succeeded perfectly with that. We've seen that with Aadhaar, which came with promises of not abusing the biometric information and strengthening the security of identity. And of course, it hasn't done that, but it has increased surveillance and control of the Indian population. And so we're going to see it again. The reason India needs a digital currency is because gross mismanagement of the economy and protectionism has led to depressed currency systems. So the only way to really preserve the illusion of a strong currency is to lock all of the doors and take 1 billion people hostage in a failed currency experiment. Others have tried this before, and Bitcoin kind of messes with that plan. So when you make Bitcoin illegal, only criminals can have Bitcoin, which means criminals in India will be the only free people in India. And I'm guessing many of them already have government positions. After all, it helps. So I'm being a bit sarcastic. Okay, I'm being a lot sarcastic. But I do expect that there is a possibility that India will again attempt to ban Bitcoin. It will not be able to stop Bitcoin from existing within its borders because, as I've said many times before, you can take your country out of Bitcoin, but you can't take Bitcoin out of your country. Criminals in India will still be able to use Bitcoin. The middle class will not. Illegal, underground, and criminal organizations, including the government itself, will still be able to use Bitcoin. Startups and all of the growth businesses that have grown out of this incredible innovation will not. So this will actually kill the Bitcoin sector again in India, and it will also prevent the middle class from diversifying their savings out of their own failing currency again. And that won't make the rupee strong. It won't make the digital rupee strong either. But it will ensure that everybody shares in the misery of a protectionist economy full of that kind of authoritarianism. Unfortunately, I am not a fan. So, by the way, I'm probably going to get some hate mail from some Modi supporters on this one. Oops. Let's see what else we have. Anonymous asks, I transferred my Bitcoin with too low a fee and it's been unconfirmed for 10 days. What should I do? Well, Anonymous, first of all, do not fret. You didn't actually transfer your Bitcoin. You still have your Bitcoin. A Bitcoin transaction either happens and is confirmed, and confirmed several times, or it doesn't. And if it doesn't get confirmed, it hasn't happened. And if it does get confirmed, it has happened. Now, it sounds like I'm speaking in mystical riddles, but the bottom line is we call this principle in distributed systems atomicity. Atomicity means it is an indivisible operation. Either it all happens or it doesn't. It's not as if the Bitcoin left your address and then exists in some kind of limbo state and then has not yet landed in the other address. The transaction that makes it leave your address hasn't been confirmed, which is why it hasn't arrived at the other address. But it also means it hasn't left your address. And if that transaction does get confirmed, at the very moment that it arrives in the other address, because it never really moved, it is also no longer available for you to spend. So either the transaction has happened and that money is already owned by the recipient, or it hasn't and it's still owned by you. Now, your wallet may hide this from you. For usability purposes, your wallet will not let you basically create another transaction spending that Bitcoin that has not yet been confirmed in this transaction. And your wallet is doing that to prevent an accidental double spend attempt or confusion by wallet users. But the bottom line is that the money is still in your wallet. You just can't control it, which means you should get a better wallet. So first of all, the idea that you did a transaction and that transaction had insufficient fee tells me that you do not have a wallet that allows you to increase the fee after a transaction has been broadcast. Wallets that allow you to do that support one of two technologies. One is called replace by fee, which allows you to broadcast a second transaction with increased fee. And the other one is a technology called child pays for parent, which allows you to make another transaction with the change or even allows the merchant or recipient to make another transaction with the payment amount that is a child transaction that has more fee, and that child fee is enough to pay for the parent fee, causing both the child and the parent to be confirmed simultaneously. So all of this is stuff that you can do with a more sophisticated wallet, but it can be confusing, especially if your wallet is not sophisticated, and it can lead you to both getting stuck where you can't make a transaction you want to make, and worse, help you, or rather put you in a situation of fear or confusion or even panic, like, where's my money? Your money is exactly where it always was. So don't worry. First of all, and there's probably nothing you can do with your current wallet to fix this. You have to be patient. Eventually, the backlog will clear and the transaction will get kicked out of the blockchain. I think the maximum amount of time that a transaction is held in the mempool by any client is 14 days. So you might only be 3 days away from getting that fixed. The transaction will simply get dropped. And at that point, I would say the first transaction you need to make is to a better wallet, one that actually allows you to control transaction fees. You can learn how to choose your wallet based on the features you want, and learn about some of the useful sites that can help you with choosing your wallet and many of these complex topics by following one of my workshops. So I'm going to talk to you about that now. I'm going to tell you about All right, let's see how we can pull this up. I think I reprogrammed my buttons. There we go. Well, listen, if you go to the shop on my website, of course you can buy dank crypto memes and ebooks in English and Spanish. But what you can also buy is an interactive workshop, a guided workshop with quizzes and videos and materials that you can read. We have 2 available at the moment. One is called Introduction to Bitcoin and Open Blockchains. It's enormously popular. It's got 85 or more, well, more now, 5-star reviews. And we don't hide reviews that don't have 5 stars. I publish all of the reviews as long as they're not spam. And we also have Choose Your Cryptocurrency Wallet, which teaches you how to find the right wallet for yourself. This one only has 20 5-star reviews, not because it's not as good, but because it's not free. So not that many people have taken it. In fact, Intro to Bitcoin has now been taken by more than 10,000 students, and I'm very, very happy about that. Choose Your Wallet has only been taken by, I think, about 200 students so far, and about 10% of them left reviews, which sounds about right. So learn more. Now, if you want, you can get a discount. So the discount code is NIK. You have to pronounce that exactly the way I did. NIK. Which is the pronunciation that the Knights of Ni use in the search for the Holy Grail of Monty Python. And some of you are now thinking, what the hell is he talking about? So for your next search, Monty Python, Holy Grail, you'll thank me. All right, let's see what else we're going to answer. I'll do this one. In response to the recent Ledger hack, Ledger vaguely mentioned a new technical solution for protecting the mnemonic and also alluded to insurance for crypto. Do you have any speculation on what they may be developing? Asks Hamburger Helper. I do not have speculation, although I did see that they circulated a suggestion that you take your seed and you split it into multiple copies by alternating which words you store on which backup of the seed. Kind of like a dumb person's Shamir's secret sharing scheme. Less resilient, easier to crack, reducing the amount of entropy, and generally speaking, insecure on every level. So don't do that. No, I don't know what their new technical solution for protecting the mnemonic is, because the ledger hack wasn't a problem of protecting the mnemonic. It was a problem of protecting the personally identifiable information that allows hackers to socially engineer all of their customers by throwing a wide net and catching the few who are not prepared and unfortunately get fooled into putting their mnemonic online. And there is no technical solution that would prevent people from putting their mnemonic into a phishing website. If they were willing to put their mnemonic into a website, and they can be fooled into doing that, they will do that even if you split the mnemonic into multiple parts. The real solution is to use the optional passphrase, and never, ever, ever put the two together. But then again, if you knew that, you wouldn't put your mnemonic into a website in the first place. This is not a matter of adding technology. This is a matter of better education about how to manage keys. And the problem here is that in that function, Ledger failed twice. They failed by leaking through negligence their own customer database, and then they failed again by repeatedly minimizing the event, pretending that it wasn't as bad as it was, and failing to educate people about the impact and how to defend themselves against social engineering attacks, because they were far more motivated to cover their ass, which they've done before. And I'm a bit salty, I'm a bit angry, because I feel that they did a disservice to their customers. Now, the devices themselves are perfectly secure. The problem is that your information is out there, which it might be out there anyway for other reasons and other hacks. You shouldn't depend on the secrecy of your private information to be able to protect against these attacks. But of course, they become much easier if someone's leaked your name, email, phone number, and physical address. So how do you protect against these? We did a whole series of videos as part of a live stream, a free live stream we did. And I had some great guests on that show. You can find more information at aantonop.io/ledgerhack, all lowercase ledgerhack. There are 8 videos, if I remember correctly, which talk about various scenarios and threats you face as a result of the leak of personal information or by being identified as someone who is interested and owns crypto, the types of social engineering attacks that can happen, and the specific risks of SIM swapping, as well as being phished into putting your mnemonic phrase into a website. See, that's how you fix it. Education. Anonymous asks, is it safe to store a BIP39 passphrase, also known as a 25th word, inside a password manager? Short answer, Anonymous, yes. In fact, I have done that. Not for all. For my deepest cold storage, I do not store it in my password manager, but that's only for that tier of storage. For other seeds that I have, I do keep the optional passphrase in my password manager. Now let me address a little pet peeve. Please don't call it a 25th word. Don't tell other people it's a 25th word. Ledger invented that phrase. It's terrible. It's a very misleading term, and it confuses the issue tremendously, causing a lot of problems with user experience and expectations. So the reason it's not a 25th word, it is an optional passphrase, is because, first of all, it's not a word. It can be a passphrase, and the recommended best practice is that it is 4 to 6 randomly chosen English words typed as lowercase and separated by spaces. Very similar to how you would do a mnemonic, only instead of the wallet picking it for you from a dictionary of 2048 words, you pick it randomly from the complete dictionary of your language, English preferably if you're using English, and you put those words all in lowercase and type them with spaces. And if they're randomly chosen, this is the correct horse battery staple that you've seen me talk about in other videos. It's this idea of using passphrases that build entropy through random selection of easy to write, easy to pronounce, easy to remember words. And then you can back it up, and you must back it up. If you want, you can back it up into your password manager. I'm going to take one more question, and that one's going to be the best question of the entire live stream. In fact, I think it might be the best question of the year. Okay, I mean, it's obviously because it's the best question of this live stream, and this is the only live stream we've done that's an open topic this year. I'm really basically clickbaiting you to stick around, because I'm going to use this time to thank my patrons. There are 780 people watching right now, but there are in fact more patrons who are supporting. And I want to tell you about them. My patrons are the cats Meow and 800, more than 800 now, community builders support me on Patreon. They support me with monthly subscriptions that allow me to do this work without bias, without sponsors, and to pay my team and my staff in order to produce high quality educational material that is neutral. So I'm now going to thank all of those who opted in to get a thank, because of course this is very much an opt-in process. Augustin Labaroni, Ala Abassi, Andrea S., Amila Dacho, Attila Dacho. Oh, I'm sorry, Attila. Bitcoin Newbie, Brooklyn Frank. I'm going to put my glasses on. Okay, hang on, people. Hang on. Glasses are coming on. I tried to wing it. Didn't work. Brooklyn Frank, Burst Up. Corey Phillips, David Fryer, David Hardridge, Davide Patti, Don Pepe di Sicilia, Frank M, Giovanni H3. Is that an isotope of hydrogen? I don't know. Impervious, Inbar Karen, J.A. Soul, Karen Ishihara, Lucia, A.K. Dancing Crypto, Minna Techblog, Miriam Devilovich, Nat Atlas, Niraj Badaya, Parbol, Prometheus Imba, Richard Taylor, Robin Kent, Ronald, Judith, and James, Steve Isaacson, Sven Sommer, System Opt-Out, thank you, Andreas. Thank you too, thank you, Andreas. Whackpack, Woohoo, BTC, and Yes to Crypto. Thank you so much for making it possible for me to do this work, which I enjoy so much, and making it possible, more importantly, to give away most of this work for free under open licenses to anyone who wants to learn, with no strings attached, with no sponsors, and from a neutral, as much as I can do it, perspective, with as little bias as I can bring to this equation. It would not be possible, especially during 2020, to do this without you. Now, I expect I'm going to have a fantastic question pulled up. It's ready. I can feel it. I am getting that tingly feeling that's telling me this is truly the best question that has ever been asked. I have truly set up expectations that I will fail now, so apologies for that. Anonymous asks, hi Andreas, could you explain how Web 3.0 and open blockchains might stop Amazon, Twitter, Google, and Facebook from having so much control over information, such as Amazon Web Services refusing service to Parler? How much new and different hardware is necessary? I really truly believe in the idea of Web 3.0. In fact, one of the reasons I'm so eager to discuss that idea and I became convinced of it is because I got to know this idea quite well. It's actually an idea first proposed by Dr. Gavin Wood, who's my co-author for Mastering Ethereum. And he proposed it very, very early on in the development of Ethereum in conversations with Vitalik Buterin, and persuaded him that there was a bigger vision here, that this wasn't just about automated execution of smart contracts, this was about re-envisioning the web. Now, if you've been on the web as long as I have, you probably remember a time when Web 2.0 was the new thing. Web 2.0 was the interactive web. Web 1 was static pages. That's where you had to click and reload a page for everything. And Web 2 turned the web into more of an application experience with interactive web pages where elements would refresh within the page, opening the door to all kinds of applications that we have today that wouldn't otherwise be possible. The chat window in YouTube that is refreshing in real time without reloading the page is Web 2.0 that you're looking at right now. Web 3.0 is that, only decentralized. The decentralized web means gradually and carefully decentralizing every aspect of the software stack and decentralizing the hardware stack so that web services can be delivered in an open, borderless, neutral, and censorship-resistant manner from anywhere to anywhere in the world. Basically, the original peer-to-peer vision of the web by Tim Berners-Lee that eventually got centralized. So Web 3.0 isn't about decentralizing the web. In some ways, it's about re-decentralizing the web, because the web used to be decentralized. And gradually, more and more components got more and more centralized. I'm not worried. And the reason I'm optimistic is because I remember a time when Microsoft was dominant in the operating system market and kept a stranglehold on new technologies. And the internet broke that stranglehold, well and truly shattered that stranglehold of Microsoft's. And at the time, trust me, many people looked at the Microsoft operating system, Windows and Office and things like that, and they said, you know, there's nothing we can do. They will dominate these technologies forever. But they were blindsided. They were blindsided by a new technology that delivered a new experience, and they weren't able to move fast enough. Even before them, there were companies like Sun Microsystems and SCO and IBM that dominated the Unix market. And they too were dominant in keeping a stranglehold over the technology of servers until Linux came along, and they laughed at it, and then they fought it, and then Linux won. And now Linux is in every device in your house and running all of the servers. So we do see these strangleholds break. The idea that Amazon, Twitter, Google, and Facebook are going to be forever, or they're going to maintain their dominance, or they're going to be able to adapt to a changing world doesn't scare me, because I don't think that's the case. Eventually, something comes along that they are not able to adapt to, because they don't understand it, because it moves too fast, because it's outside of the domain of expertise, or because in order to adapt to it, they have to cannibalize their own monopoly power. This is known as the innovator's dilemma. And I truly think that the idea of re-decentralizing the web as a Web 3.0 framework can break the stranglehold over innovation and the monopoly of information and platforms that these large companies have. And, you know, we always talk about this from a Western perspective, and we use scary words like censorship. But keep in mind, it's much, much worse elsewhere. I mean, at least here, there is some scrutiny and competition between many of these firms. Real, shocking, totalitarian censorship is happening on the platforms that are the equivalent of Amazon, Twitter, Google, and Facebook in China, where none of these platforms are allowed. In Russia, where many of these platforms are suppressed. So in those places, and in many other places in the world, there are even more totalitarian systems with an even stronger stranglehold, because there it's not just large corporations that have created monopolies through technology. It is an unholy alliance of large corporations and government that have created a monopoly of technology backed by the extreme force of violence by the government. And So let's not lose sight or perspective of what's really at stake here. Redecentralizing the web is important for stopping the stranglehold of Amazon, Twitter, Google, and Facebook, but it's important for a much, much bigger reason, because in other places, we really do have totalitarian information systems that have a much stronger hold on giant populations of people around the world. I am optimistic, because as much as bureaucrats will bureaucrat, fascists will fash, totalitarians will totally try to totalitarian, in the end, they are moving slowly. And technology, innovation, and the decentralized appetite of humanity moves fast. We will beat them at this, like we have at everything else. So on that note, thank you so much. I'd like to tell you a bit about some of the upcoming events. Now, don't forget that we have a number of live streams coming up. You can subscribe. Hopefully you'll also like and share this video, but turn on notifications so that you can see that. We've had an incredible year. We just closed 12 million views, and we have more than 600 videos on the YouTube channel for you to enjoy. And coming up, pay attention, please. This is important. In February, we are switching the weekly events to Sundays. We are switching the weekly events to Sundays. The reason is really simple. By doing these events on Saturdays and doing the post-production on Sundays, I have not had a free weekend since last February. Quite honestly, I have not taken a day off since last February, pretty much working 7 days a week. And my staff also gets dragged in often to do production work on a Sunday and post-production work on, production work on a Saturday and then post-production work on a Sunday. And we just roll into the next week. So we need to give ourselves a little break. And in order to be able to take Saturdays off, we've moved this event to Sunday. Now, I know for some of you this will interfere with other activities you have on Sundays. For that, I apologize. I perhaps cannot give you the spiritual guidance you get from your church, but you will get a very specific, politicized spiritual guidance in terms of Bitcoin and open blockchains right here on this channel. So, next, coming up, we have the rescheduled live stream about running your own node. This is from last week when a bandwidth snafu shut down my internet on the morning of my live stream. By the time I got it back, it was too late. So we had to reschedule that. We still have your questions, and you can still ask questions by going to Slido and using the code #node. Shh, don't tell anyone. Then we have DeFi, and we're going to be doing another special live stream on DeFi technologies. This will involve a lot more discussion of Ethereum. So if you suffer from an Ethereum allergy that causes shortness of breath or you to break out in hives, you may want to skip that one. Finally, at the end of February, we have our open topic live stream, which is open to any questions you might want to ask. So please join me for that. And as always, in February, we will be doing on one of these Sundays, the Patreon VR happy hour. Replacing our physical happy hours, the VR happy hour is a get-together in VR, which anyone can participate, whether they have VR goggles or not. We use a platform where you can also show up as a avatar steered by a two-dimensional experience through your browser on platforms like Windows and Mac. And you can enjoy joining us, although you will not get the full 3D avatar experience that you would with VR goggles. It's still a lot of fun. The VR happy hour is for those community builders who support me as a monthly subscription on Patreon, and of course is one of the perks. And that's all I had. I'm going to say goodbye now, and I will see you next week and wish you a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much again for attending today.
Hi, I'm Andreas Antonopoulos. If you enjoyed that video, consider that it takes a lot of work to produce open and free content that can be shared with everyone around the world. This isn't sponsored by some company. It's not promoting a product or an altcoin or some kind of investment scheme. My goal is simply to help explain the technology of Bitcoin and open blockchains to as many people as possible in a neutral way that focuses really on the incredible possibilities that this technology brings us. If you'd like to support that mission, subscribe to my channel and go on patreon.com/aantonop, where you can participate and help me build better content for more people. Thank you.